Hey folks, sorry to be missing you, but hopefully you're going to get out and enjoy some Halloween today because of it. Um, I'm going to start back from the beginning of the facial setup that we were doing last week just so you can have the whole thing in one video just for reference sake. So I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to be moving pretty quickly, but the idea of course that you can stop the video whenever necessary, pause, go back. You have some big advantages there. So I'm going to be moving a little bit faster than I normally do in class, I think. I always think I move fast and then I'm the opposite. So here we go. I'm just using the same tuna that we used from last week, which was number 17. Version 17 you can get on D2L if you want to follow along. I'm just going to hide the channel box here for the moment. And we're going to move over to the facial section right here. Before you do anything here, we do want to go ahead and click to go to build pose to make sure we're at the default pose. At this point, your character should be rigged. You can actually do painting weights after this, but I like to finish off the body and get it as tight as I can before moving into the face, just to keep things nice and clean. Clean stuff makes Advanced Skeleton happy. So as always, we want to start with the beginning and kind of work our way through. The first few sections here, the main sections we're going to be using. The ones after this are ones just to be able to tweak, change, modify, and add additional facial controls. The pre-section here is just to go ahead and define exactly what it is that we consider to be different parts of the face. So Advanced Skeleton has the same impressions that we do. A lot of this is going to be direct on-face selections, so I am going to go down here to display and choose hide joints and hide motion systems. Alright, the very first thing, just as always like we did before, if you're unsure what each of these things are, you can hit the question mark and it will tell you exactly what it's looking to select. Make sure you read as well as look at the picture here. So in the first one, it was select the poly faces that are going to be deformed by the face setup. That's anything that could possibly be deformed by the face setup. In this case, it should be the whole skin of the face here. A nice way to kind of grab things here is to press Alt-H to hide everything else that you don't plan on selecting. I also recommend selecting from orthographic views. It's just a cleaner way of making sure you get everything evenly on both sides. If you're unsure of what to grab, grab more than less. In this case, we want to grab, I'm actually going to switch over to wireframes. It's a little bit easier to see. I want to grab the entire front of the face down to the Adam's apple, if it's a male. If it's not, you can, for the females, it'll just be about the same spot here, and then around to where the ear is. Now I can't quite see the ear, so I guess actually I would need to Control-Shift-H to bring this back. And I just want to work my way around the ear. I preferably don't want to go into the ear. Hopefully your topology allows that. The reason being any faces that are in the ear are going to distort. Same thing with under the hairline. Preferably you don't want to go past the hairline. So just because if this faces start moving, the hair is not going to move with it. It's going to look weird. Unfortunately, that means for tuna here, that doesn't give us a lot of room to play with the forehead. This might be worth cheating or even adding a control to the hair. I'm going to give this a try. Otherwise, this would be pretty short here for forehead control. I want more than this, so I'm going to risk it. Risk being I might need to go back and change it later. So save all my files as I go, like always. I probably don't need the whole mouth sock. In fact, I'm going to take that off. As long as the front of the mouth sock is distortable through the system, I should be good to go. Let's see here. That's pretty good right there. Maybe we'll grab this little part too. Again, if you're unsure, grab more than less unless it's going under a mesh we care about. So let's see here. I'm going to also go to use default material so you can see this a little bit better. So now you can see, I can also click these up here. Generally you want to connect entire loops, but that would get a little bit dangerous up there. Again, this is just going to create the limits of what Advanced Skeleton can play with. We definitely want to get underneath the jawline here. Anything I do on this side, I need to do over on this side as well. Let's see here. Just going to grab all this in here. Oops. So I guess I'm going to grab down kind of across the neck here. I'm just going to go back into here and grab the rest over here. I know this is actually slow and painful to watch. I'm sorry. So maybe about like that. And since I'm so close to grabbing the whole mouse sock, I might as well just get it, and then I can deselect these. So again, if you're unsure, grab more. That should be pretty good. Actually, yeah, I kind of want that one. Unfortunately, the topology isn't really great here. I would love another loop around here about the ear, but now it's too late to add it because I've already been skinning this. I suppose I could go back and make initial changes, but I'm not going to do that right now. So, and I know that tuna works as is. So I am crossing the hairlines here. I'm going to give this a go. If it ends up looking really nasty, I'd come back and remove some of these crossovers into the hairline. So these ones might be worth just pulling out now. But again, it just gives me so little forehead. I really just don't like it. So let's see how this works out. Part of the thing about Advanced Skeleton that's great is being able to try things and then go back when they don't work. So once you've selected your faces, hit the mask button, and then it will automatically set that as a selection set for future use. The rest of these are actually much easier. So the face is select the face object. So this was polygons. Now we're selecting the object that we consider to be the face. So in this case, it's just the mesh. Hit the button. Good to go. You can tell it did it because it'll over here it'll put in the name of whatever you selected, or at least some kind of indication that you selected something. The all head is everything that's going to be affected by the face setup, including facial deformation. So you'll notice here they selected the hat. If you want to actually squash and stretch the whole head, you'd have to grab the entire head. So I'm going to do that with tuna here just by doing a drag box around there. That will grab eyes, teeth, mouth, tongue, the whole deal, mouth sock, and hair. I'm not going to select the right eye. The right eye would be the character's right eye and the character's left eye. If you have multiple pieces here for this, you might try either de-skinning and combining them, although they have to be skinned in order to be part of the facial setup, so that might be problematic. You might just, actually I guess what I'd try if I had multiple pieces here for the eye is select all the pieces and put them all under the eye. Click the button afterwards, get them all under the eye together. So there could be multiple pieces there. Let's see if it says anything about it. Nope. Upper teeth, for this one I'm just going to go ahead and hide the head. Now I can easily grab the upper teeth, lower teeth, the tongue, eyebrows if you have them, one or two, one meaning that might be combined, which is okay. And then so eyebrows. I don't have eyelashes in this character. A lot of characters are going to have just a plane that falls atop of the lid or the bottom of the lid or both. Those would be the eyelashes. And extras, in this case, they just indicate facial hair, beard, mustache, something that's part of the actual face. Maybe glasses might be part of there, something like that, shades, earrings, stuff like that might be worth putting in there. I'm not actually sure what that does, to be honest. The model check is to see if it's symmetrical. It rarely comes up as symmetrical. Are you sure? And the answer is, So keep going. If it's close to symmetrical, you should be fine. If it's not, if it's obviously not symmetrical, you're going to have to choose a non-symmetrical face down here. It's going to force you to do all the build options twice, one for each side of the face. So it'll take twice as long to set it up. This conveniently brings us to this section here, which allows us to choose some alternate or custom style rigs depending on what kind of system you plan on using. So the first section up here is probably the most important, which is first of all rig type, which is what kind of rig do you want to make. The joint style rig uses all joints for the facial setup. It's very smooth. It runs really fast. It's really efficient. This is primarily used for game engines. I shouldn't say most. A fair number of game engines do not allow blend shapes. The downside of joints is that it's harder to get a really good look. It's hard to get something that feels really natural, and you can't do small changes. You're just stuck with, if you're trying to rig it, you can't make like a perfect little wrinkle in a certain spot unless you can get the rig to do that for you. or get the rig to sort of fold naturally for you, which is very difficult. Blend shapes are great in the sense that you can sculpt exactly the form that you want. They're what's primarily used, almost entirely used in the industry in film, in order to get the most control of the system. And they look great. The downside is they're not as customizable for the animator. They're kind of stuck with whatever you sculpt them. There's some variation between, but typically this just gives the most control for the rigger, and that's what most people like when they can get away with it. There's more game engines now that do allow blend shapes, but you want to know in advance which one's which. If you're not sure, just choose joints if it's for a game engine. Mixed allows both joints and blend shapes to get the best of both worlds. Again, probably more likely to be used in film. We're going to actually try for mixed and see how we go here. The good news is once we set all this up and save it out, we should be able to change up our type and compare them and see what we like. In terms of including sorry, my brain's not working. You can choose to do the full facial setup or just partial setup if maybe your character doesn't have a mouth or doesn't have eyes or something like that. So you can choose just part of the setup. Lip controls is how many controls do you want to control the lip. My recommendation is start out with a lower number. The full sets here are just, there's so many controls it gets very overwhelming very quickly. So again, any of these you can just kind of look at the settings here and get a sense of how many controls you get. Right here we're looking at a 20 control setup. So you can see that's a lot of pieces to take care of. A lot of animators don't appreciate if you have to give them too much control unless we're looking at a professional level feature film. These other options here are also, some of them are critical, some of them are not. If you have an asymmetrical face, we talked about that before on the model check. If you have an asymmetrical face, you want to check this, and then you have to do the setup twice, one for each side of the face. There's a simpler eyelid function here, but it just gives you less controls. In this case, most animators are going to want more control over the eyelids, so I'd leave this as the regular one. If you know you're working in a game engine, click this one. The other ones here, this is mostly going to hide options that don't work in non-game engine situations. Unless they change it, I should probably check. Yep, it hides things that you're not allowed to do. Which is good. So check that if you're working on a game engine. These other ones here, the Apple Art Kit, the Roblox Head, Snapchat, these ones here are for setting up rigs for those applications specifically, which is cool that it has the option. The advanced one, let's see here. Yes, this is important. So if you're coming straight from the body rig and the body rig's all set up, this should just flow perfectly into that, no problem. If you're just starting to do a facial rig on a model that hasn't had any advanced skeleton setup so far, it's not going to work unless you click this button, and then it should automatically work. You still need to define a joint that controls the head in your rig, so you need to put that joint in there, but the rest of it isn't required. It says the skin cluster will be automatically connected. It looks like you'll probably have to actually select it once you engage this button though. Let's see. Yeah. So it's going to have you choose the head joint. To make a head joint, you can literally, it looks like you can put your own head joint in here. So just go to the rigging menu, go to skeleton, create joints, and you should just be able to pop that joint in here again, like right behind the ear. That should automatically be centered. And then you can just type, and you should call that head joint. It might rename it for you, but and then the skin cluster would be what's going to be controlled by this. So in this case, it would be, for me, the whole head. Let me turn that off, though, since we're not going to use that, and I'll get rid of that joint. Now, you might have noticed these two red circles pop up here. This is just part of the facial setup. It comes up when you first start doing the pre-section. It's kind of like that super mover we used for the body rig earlier. So you can safely ignore those for right now. This section is arguably the most important section that we're going to be working with, in that it's what allows us to define what each part of the face is and where it's going to deform from. So it's basically informing advanced skeleton what we consider to be the edge of the nose, the corner of the nose, the corner of the mouth, etc. If anything doesn't work later on when we do the rig, it's probably because you did a poor selection here. If anything looks funky, it's probably a poor selection here, which, as long as you're saving your files out, you can just reselect the correct thing, click the button, and you should be good to go to reset it to something different. You'll see this as we go. I'm just going to work my way through one at a time, taking my time. This is definitely the type of thing where you want to click on the question mark to make sure that you are selecting the right thing that it expects you to select. It's very hard to, you can't possibly know what it wants you to do unless you actually are looking at it. So even though I've done this many times, I still look at this just to ensure I'm getting the right placement of everything. You might consider turning on your wireframe and shaded here so you can actually see what you're selecting. That'll definitely be important. This is all about topology and edge loops. The very first thing we have is the eyeball. So for this one, you don't have to select anything. It even says it right there. You just click on the button. As long as you previously had a eyeball in there, you should be good to go. Or had a previous eyeball from the body set up, you should be good to go. Just hit OK, and there it is. I do notice that this is not lined up nicely though. So because it's probably just replacing it with the joint, I'm mostly noticing that it's not rotated correctly. I'm going to take a risk here and rotate this over to ensure that it's actually lined up with the eyeball as we see it here. I'm just going to do this, pun not intended, by eye. You can then hit hide, and it will hide that additional eyeball it brought in. That's just to sort of figure out where things are for advanced skeleton, but we don't need to keep seeing that. Actually, I notice my old eye centers are right here. I can actually probably get rid of those. Let's keep them. Doesn't hurt. The next thing is the eyelid outer and inner. So what it's looking for is where does the deformation of the eyelid stop and where does it start. That's going to be the eyelid main and eyelid inner right there. So what we want to do is grab that loop there. This is where if you have bad topology, this is all going to break down very, very quickly. So we also want to make sure here that when we're selecting these, go back to that picture we have, we're going to select both the top and the whole ring, but we also want to identify where the eyelid should separate, where the corners are. It doesn't know. We have to tell it. In some cases it's really obvious, like this is the corner here. Where's the corner over here? Well, you kind of have to decide yourself what you think it is going to be. And this is something that you might later experiment with. So to make that happen, I need to go to, not the channel box, my apologies. I want to go to the modeling tools. And there's a multi-component button here which allows you to select different types of components at the same time, edges, vertices, and faces. You can also hit F7 if you prefer. You'll notice as I move around, it can grab a face, can grab an edge, or even a vertice, which is exactly what we want. So the way to identify this, going back to the picture, is we're looking for that crease at the top of the lid and just following it all the way around. In this case, the crease here, it's a little tough to see. It's this guy right here. We want to make sure you give enough room between this and the outer eyelid to have something to actually move and deform. But that looks pretty good. I'm also going to just kind of find the crease here, which is right here. Although you could possibly argue for here, but I like this. I'm going to hold in Shift and add in that point to identify the crossover point. Here, I could do this point here, maybe even this one here. I think I'm going to go ahead and aim for this one. Just because I kind of like this one more anatomically speaking, but I think this one's going to do for a more cartoony character, a nice kind of flat line across here. It'll be a little more even-handed, and it will ensure that the lid doesn't kind of cross over into itself. If I made it down here, this lid's going to kind of be sliding around a curve here that I think is going to be tough to manage. You can always try out anything you want. Anyway, once you get it, hit the button. You'll know if it worked if... You have to give it a moment. You'll know if it worked if it puts in a piece of mesh that follows that line that you just created. You should also see a darkened area here and here where I identified the corners to be. The eyelid main is going to be the outside edge of the lid. In this case, there's two potential candidates. There's this one here that goes around here, possibly this one here. But in this case, you want it to be the outer thickness. So it should be not against the eye, but the outer edge of the lid. Tuna doesn't really have really strong lids, so this makes it a little bit tougher, but this should give us the result we're looking for. If you choose this one, it's going to look a little soft and thin. Once again, though, I want to make sure I'm a multi-component. I want to grab the matching vertice. Don't choose this one here and then this one up here. It's going to create really weird stuff. So you want to make sure the matching vertice on both sides, oops, is what you select. So it should be the same one all the way in as we select the eyelid. I'll click the button again, wait till it's done, don't touch anything while it's doing it, and then we have the inner lid selected. The lid main. The eyelid inner is the inside of the lid that tells it where to kind of hold against the eye. This part will deform and this part will remain relatively rigid. Everyone's different here. I'm going to select this eye and press Control H in object mode so I can look in there and show you. In this case, this is not my favorite setup, but here, this inner lid here is the one we're going to want to pick. A lot of you will have multiple levels here, and or might even go all the way back behind the eye. You still want to pick something kind of around in this range. If you pick something way back here in the eye socket, it's going to create some really weird deformations that you're not going to be happy with. In this case, I would prefer that it had at least one more loop in here, but this should still work fine. If I chose this one right here, that's not giving us much room to stretch in terms of skin. It's going to give us a pretty ugly deformation. You want at least a couple loops in here between the main lid and the inner lid. With the eye hidden, this one's pretty easy to do, but if you have an eye that's a little bit harder to work with, you can also hit the assist button and it will kind of rip open the eye socket here so you can then grab it if you prefer. The only reason why I don't like this sometimes is I can't see. It's so distorted I can't see where the corner is anymore. So I'm going to undo that by not hitting hide. There we go. Let's try hide. It doesn't like hide. I don't know what hide does, so I'm going to ignore it for the moment. I'm just going to select the eye again, Control H, and then in here I'm just going to grab that inner loop, and then once again multi-component, hold in Shift. I don't think I got it. There we go. Oh, that's what I got. Little mistakes like that, like missing part of the loop, can be enough to make the whole system not work. So you want to be pretty persnickety here as you're going through this. I did it again. So that should be the right one. Yes. You can tell which one is the right one here because these tubes are split. That's what happens. So I'm going to press Control H to bring the, maybe I'll hold off to bring the eyeball back. Hit the eyelid inner. And I think we're looking good. I should mention if I don't have the default material on, it's shading all this stuff, which is really helpful. I should have had that on before so I can actually see what's going on. Also much easier to see the separation between upper and lower lid there. So make sure that's even. Cool. I'm going to press Control Shift H to bring back the eye. And now I can move on to the lip section. I'm going to go ahead and save here because I don't want to do that again. All right, let's move on to the lip section here. Same process. Going to first define the outside of the lip, the meeting point of the lip, and the lip inner side. Very similar to what we're picking on the eyes. We even have the assist function, which might be more helpful here for a lot of you. So the first part of the lips would be that kind of line that sort of defines the outside edge of the lip. I often find in models that it doesn't line up as well as it should, or you end up with something like this, like with Tuna, who doesn't really have strong lips at all. So in this case, we're probably looking at this line here, possibly this one here. This is actually pretty close to the outside edge of the lip. This is obviously a little too high for the inside edge of the lip, but this to me is would make me feel a little bit nervous in terms of the thinness. There's just not much mesh to work with here. So I'm going to go out with this loop here, go ahead and hit lip outer. Once again, it defines, in this case, upper and lower for you. The lip main is right where the lips connect in the middle. I should mention that if your model, this is what I was talking before, if your lips don't actually connect here, or the topology isn't right, you're going to get some really funky results. In this case, if I'm not mistaken, Tuna does not have a great lip set up. I'm going to go back to the default material so you can see this better. In that this loop doesn't actually match or line up with this loop in the same position on the top and bottom. It makes this one a bad one to choose. So I'm going to actually go here and try to grab the inner lip, which I believe is this loop right here. This one's also not perfect, but at least they're on the same plane together. You can see the upper lip here, and unfortunately the lower lip tucks all the way back in here, but at least they're crossing over each other. There's actual contact, which is what I want for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and hit lip main for this one. Hopefully you guys have a better lip shape there to work with than I do. And it's worth it to note that even this one, which is not the best, still gives a good lip setup. If you do have something more like this, this is definitely much more ideal. I'd even push it in a little bit farther to show the, to choose the area where they really connect. Although actually this is connecting out here, so this would be fine. You just don't have those lips spread apart in the middle. That would be bad. The lip inner, once again, we can hit assist. Let's look at the picture. You're looking at something on the inside of the lip, not all the way back in the mouth sock, but just kind of where the lips end and the interior of the mouth begins. Once again, we can hit the assist function. It creates a really special looking jaw, but it does mean that we can kind of grab that lip a lot easier. This one, again, there's not a great one. This would probably be the best loop if it matched with this top one, but it does not. So this is probably my next best bet. This one here just goes way too deep. It's all the way down here into the mouth sock. That's not going to work for us. So that's going to have to be it. So I'll hit the lip inner button. And now we have the lips selected. Again, just to keep going here with the pattern, I'm going to go ahead and save after each step. That way later on, if I end up having to change something, or if I made a mistake, I can go back to that section really easily. So I don't have to go back and redo everything. It just gets time consuming. So I'll say lips here. And now we're on to the next section. Here we're going to move up into the brow, which obviously, as I mentioned before, we don't have a big one here to work with. But that's kind of the thing about CGs. Everything's a little bit different from place to place. So we'll just work with what we got. So, and again, remember too that any mistakes you make, you can always go back later and change them and try a different selection to see if it gives you a better setup. Once you have these selected, it's not too hard to go back and redo it multiple times, kind of like the body setup. So let's first begin with eyebrow inner. So we're doing the eyebrows. We're going to do the eyebrow inner and the eyebrow outer and then an eyebrow mid. So let's begin with that. So the inner, in this case, it's actually on the mesh. If you had a texture instead of an actual mesh, you could select this, select that instead. But here, we want it to be the actual brow itself. In this case, the one I'm looking for is going to be this one right on the very tip. So that'll be my eyebrow inner. Let me get this big green sphere there. The eyebrow outer, just what you expect, the outside here. Now I do notice that this one is selecting a little bit farther in. I'm going to stick with this and see what I get. I'm going to have to do it here anyway, but maybe I'll try the outside edge instead. So eyebrow outer. And actually here I'm going to uncheck the inner. Just by clicking the button, it'll delete it and I can reset it. I'll try this one instead. Keep it consistent. And then the inner, this is again where I wish I had a loop actually in the center, but I don't. So I'm just going to choose the one that I think is most appropriate. In this case, I'm looking for levels of control. I want a little bit more control here. So on the inner side. So I'm going to go ahead and put it there and choose center. There's also optional extra eyebrow controls. I highly recommend these unless your character is super simple and you want to keep things super fast. In this case, the eyebrow mid 1 is here, and then mid 2 is here, which is the same as the previous center. It's a little bit weird. And then we have the outside section there. So I'm going to grab right here. Again, this is where I really wish I had more loops. So not ideal. And then Let's see here. That is the mid one there. Oh, my bad. The brow center. So this one is incorrect. I definitely don't want that as the brow center. I misread that. My apologies. The brow center, going back to this is why you always check them out, is going to be right in between the two brows. That's where you get all those wrinkles when you're thinking hard. So in this case, it should be an obvious center. The question would be, do you want it to be a little bit lower or a little bit higher? I'd recommend a little bit more on level here. So I'm going to deselect and then reselect here. There we go. And now I can get my finished eyebrow center. It's really odd notation there, but so center there. And then once again, I kind of don't have full control over where I want this. My pick would probably be the outside edge, kind of get a little more flare. Not super pleased with that, but I'm definitely much more pleased with having 5 selections rather than 3. All right. The forehead is 3 selections, not 1. We're going to select the top of the brow, the bridge of the nose right here. On guys, it'll be that little bump. On women, though, it should be a little smoother. And then here, you want to specifically draw this line out from the corner of the eye and try to find the one that kind of matches this part of the brow up here. It doesn't have to be a perfect match topology-wise, but it's nice if it is. So in this case, I'm looking, you'll see here where anatomy becomes a little more challenging. I'm probably going to pick something a little bit lower here, something right in here for the center one. This one's going to be tough. So normally I'd want to pick something like way out here, but that's not going to line up topologically with a safe point. So I probably would want to pick this point right here and then see how Advanced Skeleton connects them. I can double check that middle one. Yeah, again, you can see it kind of coming out more from the corner of the eyes, what we're aiming for. So that's actually pretty good. This is technically my corner down here, I think. Oh, nope, that's perfect. So I will hit the forehead. Now, I'm not crazy about that. We're getting a really small section here, so maybe I'm going to cheat and see if I can get a bigger section. So I'm going to unclick that one more time, delete forehead. I will have to reselect it. In this case, I'm going to start with the forehead one here by clicking this one. And because it's tough to see what's going on, I'm going to use the arrow key to move it up here. Again, we want to be careful selecting ones underneath the hairline, but I think we can get away with it. And again, right in the center. There we go. So I'm getting one or the other. Again, like if you can do it on perfect topological lines, you'll get a much better selection. This might be problematic with the amount it moves the hair, but let's go ahead and try it and see how bad it is. I'm going to go ahead and save because I don't want to do that again. So here we go. Tune Rig version 4. And I'll say forehead. I could say setup forehead just to be totally clear, but this is fine. All right, our next section is going to be the jaw. This one actually has quite a bit of selections here, but less complicated than the mouth or the eyes that we were working on before. So the first one is the jaw pivot. For each one of these, we're going to select one vertex all the way through. So the jaw pivot should be right back here where the jaw pivot's from. If you put your finger right back here, you can feel it as you open and close your jaw. It is right there. So that's actually a perfect spot. On tuna, we're looking at this spot right here. Would probably be the closest. Something in here would be a little bit nicer, but this should be fine. One of the advantages of using tuna for this is we can see exactly what the selections are and how they match. So I'm going to hit jaw pivot right there. Jaw corner is going to be down here. Now, again, tuna has a really soft jawline here. Some of you guys have a very square jawline here. We're looking for something on the actual jaw itself. If I was to pick one, I would pick, kind of, we don't have topology that flows from the chin back. So this part looks good, but then it gets kind of like wraps underneath the head. It's not my favorite, but it's okay. I'm going to say probably right here. Nope, it's a little too, I should move around there. That's the actual corner right there. So I think that's going to be the closest thing. Jaw corner. Jaw itself is an easy one. It's just going to be the front bottom side of the jaw. So here's the chin. Find the bottom of the chin right in here. And again, you can see it's where it kind of makes this turn, and it's on center. So in this case, I'm going to start here. Press the arrow key to go one back. That's good. This will be too far around. And again, it's right in center. So that's our jaw. Again, it's going to replace the jaw from the body setup. That's just fine. We don't need that anymore. The throat. The throat is just going to be the, if I'm not mistaken, oh, it's right above the Adam's apple. I was going to say it is the Adam's apple, but it is not. So the throat would be right in here, kind of at the base where the jaw meets the neck. So it's going to be right in that space right there. We get a little bit of flexing on the skin here, so you don't need to go right up in that crease. You want a little bit of spillage. The cheek is going to be where the cheeks would puff out if you were like to put lots of air in your cheeks. So looking at probably, again, it's good to look around in multiple angles to kind of feel it out. So I'm going to say probably right in here. That's a little too far forward, so maybe right in here. I like that. That's good. Coming out from the center of the mouth. I think they have it a little bit higher. Yeah, they have it one higher. Doesn't mean they're right. I'm going to try this one. The cheekbone. The cheekbone is, well, the edge of the cheekbones. You can kind of feel where it wraps around here. In this case, it's this guy right there. Pretty definitively. This is too high, getting into the eyes, and this is too low, getting more into the mouth region. The cheek razor, this is kind of a weird one. It doesn't, and in my experience, this doesn't work out super great as a manipulator, but it just allows you to do squints and stuff like that. I wish it had a greater area of influence. We're looking at the spot just below the eyelids. We don't want to cross into that territory. We just want to be able to move skin up into it. So I'm going to actually choose something a little bit lower than I normally do. I usually choose something kind of higher. I'm going to choose this one. And again, in this case, probably kind of centered, or no, probably kind of centered. I could have also lined up with the eye. Again, any of these things I can change later if I don't like the effect I get. The smile bulge is what happens when you smile and this lip tucks underneath this fold of skin. The best way to find it is to kind of look at the edge of your nose, follow the loops off the edge of your nose, and it should be right in this area between the mouth and the bottom of the nose, but off to the side here, that kind of puffy bit of skin. It's not super obvious on tuna, but we're looking at this loop right in here. That would be too far. Again, we can kind of start to feel the mouth tucking in right here. That's what we're looking for. So I'm going to put that right there. I might try, if this doesn't work out, I'd try a little bit lower, but this should work out pretty well. By the way, notice I'm doing everything on the left side of the face. That's because I have a symmetrical setup. If you had an asymmetrical setup, once you did this on the left side, you would now do it on the right side too. The frown bulge, we have another bulge in the bottom. Does the same thing where the lip tucks in. This can be right down here in this kind of puffy pad of skin. On characters that are a lot more abstract, this is much harder to pick. Even on tuna, it's tough to get a sense of where these forms actually are. I'm going to guess right around here, but it could also be this guy. Okay, let's see what they picked. They picked the lower one. All right, we're going to pick that one too. Right there. And again, you can kind of see this depression forming. That's the bulge we're looking for. The nose is pretty easy. So we have the tip of the nose. We have the nose underneath, so where the deformations there should stop. And then the corner is this part here for sneering and stuff like that. So I'll start with the corner. That's probably the best corner. That gets more into the face, so we'll do nose corner there. Nose under should be the transition spot in the center, right in here. Oops. That looks pretty good. And then the nose tip. I picked the farthest point out. That looks good. Once again, I don't want to do that later on. I'll have to repeat it. So I have to, so I'm going to save it out. All right, we're just about there. We have some optional extra nose controls. The nose slide, nose center, nose nostril. These are ones to give you a little bit more control around that area. You can add them if you want. I will go ahead and add them. So the one advantage to not adding these things, if you're thinking, well, why wouldn't I add it? It's just more controls means more for the animator to deal with. If you're on a tight timeline, or you have an animator that isn't going to be like noodling every little specific thing, or a face that doesn't need that much deformation, then a simple setup is preferable. Nose center would be, again, the middle of the bridge up here, right in the center. Tuna has such a kind of an odd flat nose here. And then nostril would be the outside edge of that nostril. If I don't need extra controls, I prefer not to have them. It just speeds up my production. There's already so many controls in this face. It's like a whole nother body. The tongue, we already selected it before, so if you have one, you definitely want to click this on. And same thing with the pupil. This gives you the ability to shrink and raise the pupil. So for this one, you actually have to choose the edge loop where the pupil is. You may or may not have one. If you don't have one, then this is a pointless selection. So in this case, I'm going to go right here, the inner loop for pupil. And then the iris would, of course, be the outer loop here. This may or may not work with this, since there's actually like a some more complex geometry going on here, but we can always try it. And again, if we don't like it, we can go back, rebuild the face, and remove it. The optional up, mid, low, you can see it here, gives you the ability to add deformation to the face. This can actually be really helpful, not just for deformation, but if you have sort of a generic background character, you can see here it'd be really easy to make the character look like different people. A couple props like a hat, some maybe different eyebrows or something like that, glasses, and then completely reconstruct the face with just a few simple controls. I like this one, even if I'm not doing cartoony stuff. You can always put it on a layer and hide it if it's too obnoxious. So once again, just click on it, and then you get the selection. The extra eyelid main is a really nice option. This wasn't here before. This is for high poly characters, like really high poly characters where you want to actually define the entire rim of the lid. Should give you a much nicer looking fold on your eyelid. I don't have that here. This is definitely way too low for that to matter. We technically do have that lower edge loop, kind of. I've never used it before. Maybe I'm going to try it actually after all. This is definitely not high poly though, so I'm not sure what this is going to do. This might be a wreck. Let's see. So as we get in here, it becomes very difficult to kind of see what you're looking at. I could probably go back up here and use the eyelid outer to assist. But now I can't really see which one is which, so I'm going to press assist again and put that back. The other thing I'm going to try to do here would be to go to X-ray. That's not bad. And then the loop I'd be looking at would be this one. If your topology isn't good enough for this, just don't do it. It's just not worth it. But this might already be silly of me, but let's have some fun. So I will hit the eyelid main 2. Oh, cool. It automatically put in the split point for me, so I don't have to do that. All right, and that wraps up the fit selection section. The next section is the build. We'll do that in just a second. I didn't put it in the video, but I did say this out, of course. This is my final selection, so I want to have a copy of that. I just want to say again that once we build this, if there's anything I don't like, there are some changes we can make afterwards, but if there's any changes I don't like, I can just go back to one of my saved versions. Probably this one here. Just go back to my fit selection and then delete and replace anything that I don't like. Maybe this should have been over here instead. Maybe, in fact, maybe that should be over there instead. We'll see. So you're not stuck with whatever you get once you try it, and it takes some trial and error to kind of find what actually makes the best face, especially around the mouth and the eyelids. If those don't work, they just fail catastrophically. Now you might be tempted to hit the Build Advanced Face button. I highly encourage you not to do that and skip that section and go to this section instead. This section is the same thing, but it actually builds each part of the face setup one at a time. And the advantage to this is that if at any point it fails in the middle of this process, you can see where it's failing and then maybe debug and figure out why it's failing. It might be a modeling problem. It might be a topology problem. It could be any number of things, but at least you'll know it happened on the smile pull. It happened on the eyelids. It's probably something around the eyelid mesh that's a problem. So it helps you diagnose things as you go. I'd say when I do this, it's probably, hitting just the Build Advanced Face. I'd say, or just building any face. I'd say 1 in every 4 has a failure at some point. Something I did weird or something I did wrong. And again, it helps to know where that problem happened. The other nice thing here is if you do the individual section, you'll see there's some options in here. You can test things and change how it functions as you go, which helps you dial in a better looking face. So I recommend skipping this section. Plus, if you hit this button, it takes a while and it's tough to see what it's doing, how far along it is. It'll put up some updates down here, but you're left wondering if Maya crashed half the time, which I don't like. So I'm going to hide that section. And we'll start with the first section, which is prep, and just hit the button. You do want to keep your eye down here. When it tells you that the step is complete, it means it's complete. You'll see it copied it to the side. Control box. It's going to build us a control box. Step 2 is complete. We're now into the eyeball. Now this is one of those ones where it lets you test it. It tells you can now test the eye rotation. So if you grab these controls here, you can actually move them around and see if the eyes look how you intended. Eyelid. So I'm going to go hit the build. Whenever you test something, you should put it back to where it was, to its default position, so you don't end up with anything weird. You can always go to build pose at the face. That looks terrifying. That might have already not worked well. Again, something we can figure out as we go. Now this one does no. It says that you can test the fleshy eye. As you move these around with fleshy eye, the eyes will actually follow the eyeball itself. Now you can see some of my first issues here, which is it's affecting the skin up here in the eyebrow. So maybe I selected too big of a selection there. But I'm going to keep going and see how this looks. For what it's worth, this is what real eyes do as well. Again, go to build pose. That did not work. I'm just going to zero it out over here in the channel box. It should do it for me. In fact, for your sake, I will go ahead and test this. It should just reset that, but let's see what happens. Nope, it did not. So yeah, make sure you put it back each time. You don't want anything weird happening. It said step 5 is complete the blink, which means we can probably test it. That looks scary. Testing it means going over to my channel box, zeroing out my translate Y. Here's the blink function, or it looks like it put some controls in here for us, so I can actually scrub through. There we go. Oh, it even says it. My bad. Scrub time slider to check. Always do what it says to make sure you're doing the right thing. That actually looks good. You can see here that with the thinner eyes, we're getting. It does maintain our rim pretty nicely. That extra setting worked out well. Normally it just kind of slides down, so I'm pretty pleased with that. That looks good. Eyebrow, let's build it. Now if it doesn't say you can test it, be careful. You might be tempted to move it. Just make sure that you move it back when you're done. This should move the whole eyebrow, and this should move just parts of it. That looks great, actually. Squint, same thing. We're going to hit build. Just work our way through it. Says I can scrub through to see what this looks like. You can see it's starting to work off some of the controls it's already made. This is going to give you sculpted forms. If you do blend shapes, you can actually change some of these yourself to make it look like exactly how you want. But as long as the animator has control, it should be good. So that looks pretty good to me. Not perfect, but pretty good. Let's do the lip build. That freaked me out. Don't know what it's doing. Kind of keeping my eye down here. See, this one's a bit longer. It's doing a lot of stuff. Okay, it's complete. Doesn't say I can test anything, so I'm not. So lip fall off. This allows us to test how much of the area is affected by the lip, and you can change the settings as you go. So it's already there. So the way this works is you can scrub in here to create the effect and see how much of the area is being affected. You can see what we're looking for is if enough of the inner lip is grabbed and if enough or too much of the skin outside of the lip is being manipulated. So here, it's a lot of movement up here around the nose. I'm not crazy about that. The inner movement does look pretty good though. I'm not seeing any like the gums pour through or anything funky happening there. So what it allows you to do is change the area of effect. So here, if I want less of an effect away from the outside of the mouth, I can lower this a little bit. I can update it. And you can test it too to see how it looks. So here we're getting a little bit less effect farther out. Let's do something a little bit more severe. Let's try 2. So now you can see we're testing a much smaller area. If I like it, I can update. So that's much more reserved, but it also feels a little bit too rigid to me. So maybe 3. That's pretty good, but also a little rigid, so maybe that 4 was the sweet spot. That's actually pretty good. I like that. Again, this will look a little less freaky if I turn off this and actually look at the movement here. You can see it looks far reduced. It's just to help me see what's actually going on. That looks good. All right, lip corner. Same thing here. So we can adjust it afterwards. You just kind of have to play with it and see what it feels like. I'm going to do a little bit more smoothing. Let's try 2. Just see what I get. That looks a little special. Let's try 1. It looks weird in the geometry, but actually it's kind of creating a shape that I like. Let's go back to 0. For like the gur shape, that's actually not bad. Maybe I'll just keep it like that. Cool. We're going to work down through these, see what we get. If you have the wrong selections in the mouth here, you're going to get some really odd, freaky selections. Oops, I jumped in there a little bit early. If you do start messing around here while it's still operating, there's a good chance you'll crash Maya. So you might want to do a save in here. In fact, I'll probably do a save after this round. The smile actually looks pretty good. It's a big cartoony one, but that's actually a pretty nice shape here. It didn't say I could check it by doing that. It said I had to go through here. So make sure you read the instructions. It is a exaggerated smile in here, but actually that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Not that I can change anything anyway. The only thing I do now if I didn't like it was to go back and change my selections. So I am going to save this just in case something crashes out. It sucks when you get this far and then Maya decides to crash. So I'm going to make this 6. I'll call this build and I'll say frown. So worth noting here, and again we get to test out, you can see here where the lips are getting kind of funky. That tuck looks pretty good, but at some point it's actually going through the skin. This is not the type of thing to freak out about. This would be up to your animator to know that, hey, that doesn't look good. I should stop here. And that's the frown I get. Or here, or I have to hand sculpt it. This is just to help things out, but don't freak out if it doesn't look good. All that matters is can I get something that does look good and that sells the expression. So I'm okay with that. I wish it went to the full range, but c'est la vie. All right, narrow pull. This is in the pucker shape. Actually, that's surprisingly good. Again, you might get some weird stuff, so you might be stopping somewhere in here, not going the full range. I'd rather have more range from the animators than less, so that actually looks good. The cheek. Not bad. Again, I get to scrub. I kind of feel looking at this that I might have been better picking out something like right in here. It's not bad from the side. It does feel. It should feel like they're filling, like he's filling, or she's filling her mouth or his mouth with air. I probably would choose one a little bit farther, closer to the mouth in this one. If I want to do that at this point, what I want to do is go back to my original file, move the cheek where I want it to go, and then build again from the beginning. So it's a little annoying, but I'm just going to go ahead and get all my notes, and then if I want to make changes, I'll do them all at once. So cheek razor, let's see how that looks. Actually, that's good. I like that. A little bit of that extra squint on there. That looks good. The jaw weighting you also have quite a bit of control over. The effects are a little bit more subtle. So what we have here is an upper limit, which is the blue, the middle stretching, which is the red, and the bottom limit, which is the green. That actually looks pretty decent. It's pretty convincing. It has a nice shape to it. The mouth isn't getting all ugly and hideous. If you are getting some really bad distortion in the mouth, or like, you know, the lips are freaking out, it's probably because you made bad selections the first time around. We have the same options as before, where we can add more weight smoothing. You have to update after each one. You can also paint weights just like we did normally. So if you click on the button, it'll bring up the ability to paint weights on here. And then you can keep scrubbing. You can also, if you go to frame 0, you can actually move these points. So you can go in here and grab these control vertices and adjust where the distortion happens. So if you feel like you're getting like a softer level of control here, I could drop this down and try to get this to follow the jawline a little bit better. If you like how it looks though, don't sweat it. And here it talks to you about editing the curves. And then you just update after it. Again, if it, you know, as slow and frustrating as this can be, oh, I just did the weight smoothing, didn't I? As slow and frustrating as this can be, ultimately, remember that if you were to be doing this by yourself, you know, this could easily take an hour, 2 or 3 hours to get a perfect painting on the jaw. So the fact that we're waiting here for even a minute or two is nothing compared to what you otherwise could be doing. I'll pause the video while this is working. I'll let you know how long it takes. Definitely one of the slower operations, but it probably took a total of 2 minutes, so not a huge deal. It did make me nervous though, and because I'm nervous, I would save. I probably should have saved it as a new one, but since it's still part of the mouth, I let it go. Let's go ahead and do the jaw open control. We're getting close to the end. If you've made it this far, you're probably going to be in good shape. This one allows you to test it with the actual controller, which is really nice. You can start to get a feel of how it's going to look. You can almost make him talk at this point, which is pretty cool. It's pretty good. You can see if I go full width here, we're getting some really odd distortions. So we probably would be keeping this a little bit more reserved, or expect our animators to keep it more reserved. But they will have full control of the mouse, so they can sculpt it as they see fit. And again, we might be able to use blend shapes to fix some of these things as well. So let's see. I am going to 0. Oh, nope, it's a scrubbing function. So I'm just going to update in here. Should put us right back to the 0 point. Good. And then I'm going to go ahead and build the nose. I don't think I've ever had the nose fail. It's pretty straightforward. It says you can scrub in here, but I'm not actually getting anything. Oh, that's only for the snarl. Okay, fine. I will build the snarl. The snarl we can check. Not crazy about that one as in terms of a pose, but the fact that I can do all these things with the nose is actually pretty nice. So And we can see the actual controls right here, which we're not allowed to move. Oops. All right. Undo if you do something you're not supposed to, and then be prepared to have to restart or crash Maya. All right, tongue. It's usually pretty fast. Adds controls along it. Already done. Regions. Let's go ahead and build those. Regions allow you to move parts of the face. It's actually really great for making, again, new characters with one build. Eye aim. It's really straightforward. Upper, mid, low. This is your squash and stretch effect. The phonemes allows you to do speech patterns. I actually haven't had this yet in the ones that I've built, so I'm excited to try this out. Can't tell if I clicked on it or not. There we go. It's done. Emotions. I haven't had this one before either, but it gives you some basic emotions to work with. These are just starting points, just something to work with, and then from there on out you could play with it as you see fit. And then finish. I just made the big mistake. I started moving the viewport in the middle of its operation because I thought it was done. I might crash Maya right here. So I'm going to let go and hopefully it doesn't crash. Down here you can see the progress bar. And then here we should still see it being done when it's done. Cross my fingers and hope that I just didn't mess that up. Don't move around the viewport while it's doing its thing. Just let it do its thing. I'm going to go ahead and pause while this is doing its thing so you guys don't have to suffer through it. Still going, what I should mention is it's probably doing blend shapes right now. It's doing the blend shapes based upon sculpted movements of the joints and the controls here is my guess is what it's doing. Normally a blend shape would be done one sculpt at a time by a sculptor or the modeler. So we're coming up on the end. I'm still going to pause. I'll come back when it's done. Okay, so the last step you guys didn't get to see is at the very end it told me that it was converting things to blend shapes. So what I think it did is it took all those shapes set up by the on the face setup that we're seeing here and it just made them blend shapes instead, so we can use the blend shape sliders to control this. I will still be able to use this too, but it also means you can resculpt the blend shapes, which is pretty cool. At this point, you can fully test it. I would definitely save after you finished this part of the facial rig. If it got to that point, pat yourself in the back, because a million things could have gone wrong there. And I will just call this facial setup build complete. So as you can see, there's still a lot of things we can do here to this. There's a lot of custom options, custom controllers, and different types of ways to play with this. We have our good old Delta Mush to work with too. But for right now, the main part of the build is done. We'll cover these options later. You'll notice that the steps are all gone. So if you do want to go back and make any changes, what you'd want to do is you can toggle and make changes here. Once you toggle, you can go ahead and make new selections. Just click on the checkbox to remove a selection, make the new selection, click on the button again, and then it'll make a new checkbox there. So you can go back in and change anything. I'll show you that in just a minute after we go through it. But the first thing you really want to do here is test it. Go through and spend a little bit of time just making sure that you like what you've selected and you like how it moves. In some cases, it'll be obvious that it's just a disaster and it's just not what you planned is just not working. In some cases, like right now, things seem to be working well. The only question is, would you like to tweak it a little bit, make a slightly different selection, which is the main thing that we can do, or in some cases, like we saw with the lips, choosing different areas. So what you want to do is go through each control here. I'm going to turn off my wireframe unshaded, and just go through and try some of the functions. So here, I'll tell you right now that I find the fact that this is moving the mouth really annoying. I don't like that. I would much prefer this just be the eyebrows or just be just be the eyebrows. Also check your functions over here. For example, squeeze, I can click on the name, middle mouse click over here, and then go back and forth. I really have no idea what's moving this or the control back here. That's bothering me a little bit. Keep in mind though too, these are more automatic controls, so A lot of animators would probably spend more of their time actually sculpting here with the actual curves as opposed to just doing the generic movement there. I do wonder about the fact that it's moving the mouth, though. That's odd. I wonder if maybe I had a bad selection. I do notice here I do have a problem with the eye sockets, that they're actually, I'm getting some separation between the eye and the eyelid. That would probably be due to a bad eye placement. I have to go back and probably rework that. That's a little frustrating, but blink is one of the big ones we want to make sure works. So if you click on the name, middle mouse click and drag, does the character actually blink? It looks like I'm getting that mouth control on every single one of these, which is really frustrating. That could be a bug in the system. There's no way that that would be something that someone would put in there. So I'll have to go back and retry it. So in this case, what I probably would do is go back to reset all my steps and try it again and see if I get the same thing. Maybe try a different setup. It might be the mix setup is giving me problems. I also say if you go ahead and try a few things. If you really run into issues, sometimes you can email the programmer on Facebook or use the messaging system there. Send them the problem, send them your file, both your file, your base file, and your rigging file. And often they can find out what you might have done. It can be something really simple, like you change the name of something or move something around that you shouldn't have, or maybe move something when you shouldn't have. All these things are possible. So often just run the same system again, see if the problem goes away. It might have just been a bad selection in your part. We can check the pupil and the iris. So actually that's pretty freaky, but it seems to work. That's terrifying and is not working well. So either I'd try a different selection on the iris, or again, might be running into an issue there. Not bad. It's pretty limited range on these, but again, you can always grab them directly and move them yourself and get full range. It could be awful or great. These aren't bad. That looks pretty good. Expressions are pretty good. And we also have the phonemes. You can go through each one just by clicking on the name. And again, these won't matter quite as much. It's just trying to give you a sense of these shapes. It's just a bonus. A lot of animators would never even use it. They just make their own. But having something there is cool. I'd be curious about the O shapes, the rounded shapes. Those are ones that are nice that someone's done for you, or the W, the more purse shapes here. So that's actually kind of helpful. And then there's some expressions there as well. These are pretty generic. Again, if you were real into the gun, maybe you'd use these, but probably you'd just, 99 times out of 10, you would just sculpt them yourself. We definitely want to try the eyes, make sure that they follow nicely here. Again, you can see that eye separation issue. That's because either the eye itself isn't round or I didn't get the center point correct. So that's going to take a little bit of play. You can also move the eyes separately, which looks great. The eyebrows, want to check those too. Oops, that's not the eyebrow. Oh, that's the outer lip, outer rim right there. Is it hidden? There should have been a whole button for the eyelid, so you can move them all at once. I don't see it. Again, that facial control shouldn't be moving back there. That might be, maybe that's part of the issue. Maybe that's something that I should have play with not adding, but you can see here we can stretch and compress that part of the face and the lower part of the face. Obviously that one we're not going to be able to move too much. Yeah, this control usually works a lot better, but I think it's because I'm used to the head squash, which is a much more effective control. So maybe if I did this again, I wouldn't put that on there. Keep that one off, since I believe it was an option. Let's see here. One thing you could try as well, I wouldn't, so I'll go back and make my changes first, but you could do some tests really quick, trying out the Delta Mush and see how it feels. For the Delta Mush, you can apply it here, you create it, you can get rid of it if you don't like it. The eye area often looks really bad with the Delta Mush, so you want to get in here and see how it looks. I don't see anything too much different than it was before, but sometimes you can get some really bad distortion. If that's the case, you can delete it or select, and try the blink. That's the big one. Actually, mine looks pretty good. If your blink is no longer working well, you can select the eye area and the lip area if you're getting issues there, and you can zero the weight selected. So let's see how the mouth looks. Actually, it looks pretty good. I'd say it might even be looking better. Yeah, I'm not getting as much folding over here. So I actually like it there, but if I didn't, I can always select that area, lip or eyes, and then zero the weight selected, and then the Delta Mush would no longer have any effect there whatsoever. I once had eyes that were perfect, and when I added the Delta Mush, they would no longer blink at all. So the head squash you can play with as well. The head squash adds additional controls on here. Not that many. Something weird is going on. Or it's still working. It's probably still working. If you're ever unsure if you're not getting the sign down here, click on the script editor and scroll to the bottom. It should tell you what you did last. Let's optimize the head squash. That shouldn't matter. These things shouldn't be here. So I'm getting a few errors here. Again, if you're getting errors, it's probably because of something accidentally that you did along the way. Or you might just need to take this lattice and Control H it, hide it. But it should have gotten hidden on its own. So the squash and scratch of the head is great. It's a really nice feature if you want more of that cartoony look, or again, want to be able to change the look of your character into different characters. So I like this one a lot. I always use it, even if my character is not going to be heavily distorted. So that's what we're going to do for now. I am going to, I guess I'll do one more section here and show you how I would repair things or make changes, just so you can see how that looks. I typically do that before I do these sections here, so I wouldn't normally add in the head squash and Delta Mush until after I've made all my selections and make sure they're exactly what I want. So I kind of jumped ahead a little bit there just because that's fun to play with. Save before you do that so you can always go back. Okay, so if you're in the position to need to go back and make changes, something you didn't like or something didn't work out, these things are making me nervous because they're not working right. We're getting that connection to the mouth, which I'm hoping we can fix. Sometimes even just going back through the whole thing one at a time might fix an issue that came up. You might just, again, clicked on something you didn't mean to. It's causing issues. So if I already went back and opened up my file. So I went back to my build file before I started adding in the squash and stretch and Delta Mush. I can talk. This is why you always want to save that file so you can go back to it, and why you want to name it carefully so we understand what we're looking at. You should also notice that the file has gotten really big. Remember that the mixed blend shape and joint system is pretty heavy, adds a lot of layers to this. So what I'm going to do, I just want to show you how to go back if you do need to make changes. I'm going to go back to the build section here. I'm going to reset the steps. So that gives me the ability to do the steps again, and I'm going to have to do the steps again. Now notice that these things are all still here and probably still functioning. So I want to be a little careful. I don't want to actually make new changes here until I toggle the Fit Advanced. So until I switch it back to the non-built version. From here, I can go up to Fit, and anything I want to change, I can change. So for example, I wasn't really happy with my cheek selection. So let's find the cheek. I can deselect that now. It says delete cheek, yes. And now I can select anything new that I want to use to the cheek. Notice it keeps everything else just as normal. So I'm going to try this guy right here instead. Something a little bit closer in, and see if I get a better cheek shape. Anything else you didn't like, maybe you didn't like the way the eyebrow moved, maybe you prefer this one up here, fine. You find that little section, you turn it off. Let's just do it for the hell of it. That would be brow mid 3, I believe. Yes. So just for the hell of it, let's get rid of that. And now I'll choose this one and see if I get better controls that way. No problem. Maybe you didn't like your forehead. Anything you didn't like, you can change. I'm not crazy with those extra controls in the nose. I'm going to get rid of them. So I like these. I didn't like these. So I'm just going to pull them out. They were optional. Now they are gone. I forgot to try out the tongue, by the way, I realized. I didn't like the upper mid, low. I'm going to pull that out too. So that's gone. The extra eyelid worked out. I like that. I'm going to keep that in there. And, right. I mean, any changes you want to make, go ahead and make them, and then you want to just test and try and play again and see what improvements you can get. This does require play, especially when you're doing your first round. I've done tuna many times, so I'm pretty confident with most of my selections right out of the gate. As always, once you've made your new selections, go ahead and save this out. Save scene as. And I'll call this facial setup build complete 2. Now, lots of versions going on. Or you can say revise, something like that. Once you're ready and it looks good to you, you do want to rebuild it. So I wouldn't just toggle it back and hope for the best. I want to actually rebuild the selection. So this will take a minute. It's worth doing though. So I suppose I could also try deleting all, which would delete the current rig. I'm going to go ahead and do it since I had some errors in there anyway. So it's going to get rid of it. So that just gets rid of the controls. We're right back to where we were when we finished the selections. And now we just have to build the face again. Now, once I've built it and I know that it all works, all that being said, I can't remember my changes. Curious to I'm curious if it remembered my changes in here. I'm trying to talk too fast. I could build it again one at a time and get those changes one at a time as well. Or if I'm pretty confident in it, I can go ahead and do the one button. Let's try that out since I haven't done it with you guys. You might want to open up your script editor so you can see what it's doing as it goes through it. Kind of move it to the side like this. And then I can do the build advanced face. Let's go ahead and see it. I'm just curious how long this actually takes from beginning to end. And again, because it worked the first time, pretty confident now I shouldn't run into bugs. Although maybe the original bugs, we'll see. So I'm going to hit build advanced and see how we go. You'll see here as it's going through, the nice thing about having your script editor open is it's telling you each step and what it's doing. So you can actually step away, grab a drink, come back, and actually see where it is in the process, not just based upon what's going on in here. So I'm going to press pause since you guys have already seen this, and I'll keep an eye on that time. So that was actually pretty fast. It took about 3.5 minutes. And again, it followed every step through here, through step 27 to the build phase complete. And again, I can test it out and see what I think. I'm also missing now that compression there in the background from the, and it looks like it did take care, oh no, let's see, this would, looked like it did actually take care of the mouth issue. So whatever is connecting there is now gone and no longer a problem. So that's good. That problem got fixed. I do still probably need to fix my eyes. But I'm definitely happier with that change there. So that's how you fix things. Don't forget as well, if you want, you can go back in and play with the rig type. So we did the mixed first, but if you want to try the blend shapes, the joints, and see how that feels, try them out. Again, it's just a matter of clicking the button, deleting the rig, and rebuilding it from scratch. I will note that when I went back and did it just joint style, that I did get a more successful eye that wasn't leaving that big gap in there. So that's that was one bonus there. I forgot to mention this part over here too. This part allows you to actually move parts of the mesh around. So you can actually kind of resculpt the face by grabbing it here and just moving the entire section somewhere else. So maybe that's your character instead, or that's your character. You can see you can make some pretty dramatic changes, and for the most part, these things still function. They can get a little special. Don't forget your go to build pose here will bring you back to your original pose as you're going back and forth and testing your different operations until you get the rig set up that you like the best. We'll stop there for today, and then when we come back, we'll look at some of these other options here and how you might play with them. Good luck.